I'm Laura, and my husband is Lloyd, and Sonny is now 13. I have a daughter, Lois. Sonny was diagnosed with Burkitt's mature B-cell lymphoma when he was 5 years old in December 2010. So he's now 7 years post-treatment in remission and doing really, really well, fighting fit. About 4 months before Sonny was diagnosed, he had some episodes that were a few weeks apart of high temperatures and sometimes vomiting. He would feel unwell, have a bit of a tummy ache, and I just put it down to him being a 5-year-old and perhaps having eaten too many sweets or something like that. Didn't really think it was anything serious. But he started having some pain passing water a couple of times, which turned out not to be connected. But when I went to the GP, he referred him to a paediatric urologist, and we thought really no more about it while we were waiting for that appointment to come up. And he never made it to that appointment because he became ill and was admitted to hospital. The surgeon came to speak to us and said that they'd removed a part of the bowel, resectioned it, and that he should have no lasting effects from the surgery. At which point I said, I could kiss you. And he said, but there was no sign of disease, such as Crohn's or anything like that, and that there was a tumour there. And I just was stunned. It was a complete bolt out the blue. 24 hours earlier, I didn't think there was anything wrong with him at all, and to suddenly be told he had cancer. My immediate reaction was to say, so where do we go from here? What do we do now? My husband's reaction was, unfortunately, he threw up. He ran out the room and he threw up. They said they would send what they removed off for analysis and get back to us in about 4 days. In that time, I didn't ask anyone anything about lymphoma. I didn't Google anything. I had lots of things going around my mind. I didn't have a clue. Could lymphoma mean it's a secondary cancer? Could it have spread? I didn't know anything about lymphoma at all. And to me, it was very important that it stayed that way until I was told anything by an oncologist. It was the longest 4 days of our lives. We were upbeat and smiling in front of Sonny. On the very first night, at about 3 a.m, I was crying in my bed next to Sonny, and he said, "Mummy, why are you crying?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just a bit sad at the moment and, you know, ignore me." And he said, "I don't like to see you cry. Don't cry anymore." And I never cried in front of him again the whole time he was ill. I just stayed upbeat and happy with him. And I felt when I woke up in the morning that it would have all been a bad dream. And I'd wake up and Sonny would be in his bed at home, but he wasn't. Once we had it confirmed that it was definitely lymphoma, we had a better idea of the treatment plan, and we were told that it would be quite harsh, and we were warned it would be difficult for Sonny and there'd be long hospital stays. So we spoke to Sonny and explained to him that he had a thing called Burkitt's lymphoma, and that's what had grown in his bowel, and that's what had made it perforate, and that it had been taken away. But they had to give him some really, really strong medicine to make sure that it completely went away and didn't come back. We told him it would mean he would have to spend a lot of time in the hospital. He wouldn't be at school for quite some time. He didn't ask anything about, could I die? I had decided, along with my husband, that if he asked, I would be honest about everything. I wouldn't lie at all. And that I had decided that if he said, could I die? I would say that the doctors are doing everything they can to make sure that you live a long, 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 long time. So when Sonny went into hospital, it was soon after our daughter's 3rd birthday. I never had to sit down and explain to Lois where Sonny was or what had happened, because she was staying with her grandparents. They looked after her for the 4 months that Sonny was in hospital. It was very hard being apart from Lois for as long as we were because we had to be in the hospital with Sonny. But after the first few days, my husband and I then took it in turns to stay at the hospital so that one of us could be at home. And we were very much like ships that passed in the night. As he came in, I went, and vice versa. So we didn't really get any time together for that 4 months. Sonny was really, really lucky that the school he went to at the time was a community school. It was a very, very close-knit community, and a support network sprung up the day after his diagnosis. And the school were incredible with keeping in touch with Sonny and sending good wishes. And another thing that was done, it was actually organised by the school at Great Ormond Street, was they set up a Skype conversation from Sonny's bed to the school. And it absolutely made his day, because the pain and illness that he suffered was nothing compared to how much he missed his friends. And they just did really kind, sweet things to make sure that Sonny knew he wasn't being forgotten and things weren't just going ahead without him. I stayed upbeat by decorating Sonny's room so that it didn't even look like a hospital room anymore. It was December when he moved in. There were fairy lights everywhere, and we just made it quite fun. He had lots of things that he could do in bed, like Lego, drawing, playing with stickers, and he was quite happy to just lie in bed and do these things. And it was lovely sharing a room with him for 4 months. When we came home, I actually missed that. When Sonny became ill and we essentially moved into the hospital with him, I then spent quite a few weeks completely out of the community. And on the rare occasions that I came home, I didn't feel up to socialising. On one occasion, I walked into a local restaurant for a friend's birthday. It was the first time I felt able to go out and be around people. And 4 of the tables had at least one person who came up to me to ask me about how Sonny was. That was fine. It was nice to know that people cared so much. But then I just expected that everyone knew. And one day I went into a shop and there was a lady I knew worked in the shop, and she said, "How's things? How's the family?" And I said, "Oh yeah, Sonny's doing well. He starts his next chemo in a couple of days." And she physically collapsed back into the railings of the clothes. And she hadn't heard. She was one of the few who hadn't heard. And I felt just awful for springing it on her like that. I just assumed. My sister was amazing and set up a Facebook group called Supporting Sonny Through Lymphoma. And she was able to let everybody know very quickly and very efficiently any updates on Sonny, and stopping the need for me to have to answer questions. I did get texts from people saying, "Hi, how are you? How's Sonny?" And I wasn't able to respond to them, because apart from saying, "I feel awful and Sonny has cancer," I don't know how else I could have answered that question just in a quick text. So I just didn't respond to those texts, and gradually people understood that a text from them just with a kiss was enough. So we were told all of a sudden one day, "You can go home today." I felt that I was a bit strange not wanting to leave the hospital, but they did explain to me that that was a very, very common feeling of being scared to go home. I think his first appointment was only a couple of weeks later, but unfortunately he did have to go into his local for 5 days because he did get a temperature. So after that, there were no more inpatient stays at all. And it was just regular checkups that gradually became fewer and more far between. So after about 3 months, they dropped back to him just being seen once a month, which just felt bizarre, having lived in the hospital with him for so long that he could go a whole month without seeing a doctor. If it were happening now and Sonny had just been diagnosed, I feel I would have benefited from speaking to somebody who had been through the situation, because there were questions I wanted to ask that weren't necessarily medical questions, and I didn't want to Google it. So where I had feelings where I thought maybe it was unusual how I was feeling, I now know that it was quite common. I would like for someone to have said to me, take help when it's offered, because without the help we were given, I don't know how we would have stayed sane throughout it all. A lot of people gave help without asking, did we need help? They just did it, which was really very useful. Things like our washing, taking our clothes home from the hospital and just returning them a few days later. I had to accept help from people. I had to accept help from charities that provided help for Lois, because she did suffer when her brother was away from her for so long. So I accepted help from these charities, which at first I found really difficult, because I do lots of fundraising and work with charities, and being on the other side of it was hard. But I would say accept whatever help you are offered, because it will get you through it. And don't Google anything. If you really need to research something, go to a reputable website of a charity that you know, or ask the doctors. Don't just go and Google it and go onto a forum, because you'll hear horror stories and things that just aren't correct. And just don't.